Nobody wins with the sweatshop clothing game. A few people get rich and the rest of us get crap.
Dit is Aja Barber. Haar verslaving aan fast fashion heeft ze ingeruild voor een nieuwe missie. Ze verleidt onverzadigbare klerenkopers om duurzame keuzes te maken. En ondertussen schopt ze levenslustig tegen de schenen van de mode-industrie.
I actually did come up to a CEO and said to them, "You guys should really consider making less stuff." And they looked at me like I had two heads. I think we know they're not very much interested in making less stuff. I've asked them. Companies that produce overseas aren't going there to be altruistic. They are going there because they can get very cheap labor with very little responsibility. And they can squeeze these factories, which they often do. That's called the race to the bottom. When you go to one factory and say, can you do these jeans for us for, £2 a pair? And then they go to another company and that company says, we'll do it for £1.90. And then you go back to that other company that's really desperate to pay their employees and say, can you do it for £1.60? And you just squeeze everyone. And we know that humans only work so fast, right? Like, can you make us 200,000 of this garment in a week? Yeah, we'll just employ some magical fairies who will come and do the labor. That's not how that works. But corporations like to pretend like, oh, well, they said they could do it, so we just believe them. And so what that factory ends up doing is they end up taking that order on, and then they call up other factories and say, can you do some of this labor? Can you do some of this labor? That is how your clothing gets made in a sweatshop that employs children. None of us were meant to buy 68 items of clothing a year. The reason we do that is a litany of reasons. Peer pressure, advertising, social norms changing due to advertising and peer pressure. But nobody was ever like, you know what? When I grow up, I want to buy a whole new wardrobe every single season, and then I want to dispose of it because it's no longer trendy and some of the clothing wasn't well made, and I want to buy new things again and again. This was not how we were meant to live our lives.
No.
No.
No, 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 no.
No, 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 no.
Hell no. No.
Disgusting.
For me, I was never the person that needed to give H&M thousands of dollars a year, but I did it because I wasn't thinking about it. So start thinking about who you are within the system and what changes you can make and make them. I have yet to meet a single person who's like, yeah, I stopped buying fast fashion for a year, and you know what? I really miss clothing that was made through exploitation. It has never happened. I always say I'm never sitting from a perch of judgment like, me, I got ethical clothing now. No, I had to go on this journey, and that's what I'm trying to do, is share that journey with people. The person who is creating the clothing in their part of the world is having their environment ruined by these systems. They're having their wages stolen. They're having their labor stolen. They're having their resources stolen. They're really being harmed by creating $5 dresses for those of us in countries like the UK to be able to feel like we're rich. So when people say to me, like, that's a good job in their country, I'm like, really? Well, why don't you do that job? And they're like, well, I can't do that job. And I'm like, well, why can't you do it? If it's a good job for them, why isn't it a good job for you? And they're like, well, first of all, I don't live there. And I'm like, but you could. And then they're like, well, I don't want to do that job. And I'm like, well, why not? And basically, I'm just like, here's your shovel, dig yourself down deeper. Because what people reveal in that conversation is that we have an internalized colonialist idea towards people that live in the global South, that they should want shitty jobs that we don't want, that pollute their environment, and nobody wants that job. If you don't want that job, they don't want that job, right? But a job with dignity where people have collective bargaining and power, that should be the minimum of what we're aiming for everywhere, whether it be Bangladesh or whether it be Sheffield. Hello. Hi. Good to see you. Yes.
Aja draagt haar vriendin Laura Jean op handen. Zonder duurzame modemerken als die van Laura weet niemand dat het ook anders kan.
We have to address the core of the problem, and the core of the problem is essentially making better clothes.
Yes.
Not just from a construction point of view. You know, it's all about thinking about sustainable design. You know, how is it possible that something that costs as much as your coffee and your croissant is something that actually had so many hands involved? How, like, it doesn't make any sense.
People are looking for this magic bullet, right?
Yeah.
But like, the magic bullet is having better items that we keep for a longer time, repair and care for. If it's not well made, it just becomes trash. All the clothing that we are donating that doesn't get resold is ending up back in the global south, where it is polluting someone's environment in Ghana, in Kenya, in Uganda, in Chile. You know, so when we donate our clothing, we think that we're doing something nice, except for when all of us are buying hundreds of garments a year, and we're getting rid of that much, and a lot of it is poorly made from materials we don't want to wear because they're not very good materials. And if an item is crap to us, it is crap to everyone. No one wants crappy clothing. Not you, not them. All we're doing is making that someone else's problem, but telling ourselves that, like, we did a good thing.
Let's talk about
Let's get serious.
polyester.
So I went to a certain fast fashion store to buy a fun summer dress. And I was just wondering exactly how fun is it and for whom, considering the fact that it is 15 euros?
Right, so the first thing I'm gonna say is this fiber makes me sweat. It doesn't feel that great, but I've come to realize that that's what you're gonna get when it's 15 euros. This is 99% polyester and 1% elastane. There's a reason why this summer dress doesn't breathe, because it is completely made of plastic. 60% of textiles currently are plastic fibers. So made from oil, your polyester is plastic. When you wash these garments, they shed microfibers. Microfibers go into the ocean, they go into the water, they go everywhere. They get eaten by the fish, we eat the fish, we eat it. Hey, you drink it in your water supply. It's said that like every human has like what, a credit card's worth of plastic within them. You can thank microfibers for that. And one of the ways that we could actually make some real change there is by making sure that every washing machine that gets sold from now on has a built-in microfiber filter. That's something that we could really challenge that would, you know, keep some of those fibers out of the waterway. There are plenty of ways that we can clean up parts of the system, but we need regulation.
This dress has a green label on it saying 20% recycled cotton.
Well, let's start by saying that like 20% isn't a very high margin. It feels very plasticky, which means that even though this might be cotton underneath, this garment decomposing in landfill, probably not gonna happen in an ideal way. But then the fact that it's like 100% cotton, I think feels a little bit deceiving in a weird way to me.
There is no other way for this to be changed unless there is a certain regulation. The only thing that regulates me as an entrepreneur, as a person that has a company, is me. It's my moral compass. You know, I can go to any factory and try to squeeze them in to work for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we can do the same awful things that anyone else does if we didn't care.
People will come to me and say like, how do I know what's a good company versus a bad one? And I'm like, ask them how much they pay the people that make their clothing. And if you don't get a very good straight answer, because the ones that don't will be like, at At said fast fashion company, we've been working to end modern slavery since 2002. And if you look over there, we built a well in a country where the supply chain has ruined the water supply because of our profit margins. So if you get a real roundabout answer, make an educated guess that good things are not happening there. When you're trying to do things the right way, and then you have Goliath over here who is doing things the absolute wrong way, of course they're gonna undersell you, undercut you, get the majority of the business because there's no legality stopping them to do it. We have to start rewarding businesses who are actually doing things the right way in our society, and we have to start clamping down on businesses who aren't. I think that there should be a global minimum on how much certain items should cost to be produced everywhere. When the big businesses have to play by the same rules that all of the ethical businesses who pay fair wages are playing by, then you actually have a competitive playing field where small business can survive. It's really time for there to be rules that everyone has to play by. We need regulation today. However, we as a society and a culture will not be motivated to push for any change from our lawmakers without changing ourselves. Who wants to regulate a system that everybody is happy with? Which lawmaker is going to be like, my constituents really love this shop, so I am going to regulate it? That's not how this works. And so we have to change our culture, but that starts with one or two of us changing ourselves. And then we talk to our friends, and then we talk to our community. And before you know it, you're composting and you never shut up about it, because that's me. I love my compost. The first thing that you can do as a citizen is buy less stuff. Set a limit and say, you know what? When I need new jeans this year, I'm going to get them secondhand. Thinking about supporting businesses that you know are paying fair wages, small businesses, and buying like one dress that season instead of 6. You don't even have to buy a dress. You could rent one. Start with looking at how you're being marketed to on social media. Start with unsubscribing from some shops. Get off some email lists. That's it. Look at these systems with a critical eye. See how you feel. And I know you're gonna probably think, oh, this is gonna be weird. She's wanting me to wear a burlap sack. And it's like, that's not how that works. And I think when you take enough time, you start to see that it is a sea of plastic. You start to see things really clearly for what they are. At first, it'll feel really weird, and then you'll feel a peace of mind and a clarity that you probably haven't felt for years. I just want all of us to have a good life. I want you to have good clothing that you wear for a long time, that you feel good about because it wasn't built with the exploitation of someone else. I want the garment worker to be able to pay their bills, send their kids to school, take a holiday, have the same benefits that we want. I want all of us to have a good life. And I think that that is absolutely possible, but it starts with us looking at this system and rebuilding from the ground up, because what we currently have is a castle made of poo.